Nobody tells you what it actually costs. Not in money. In something you cannot get back. It is 10:22 on a Wednesday night. You are sitting at your kitchen table with a phone calculator open and a bowl of rice you made because going out felt like too much. The kitchen light is the kind of bright that makes everything look a little worse than it is. Your checking account says $480. Rent is $420 of that. On the counter is a coffee mug your father gave you the Christmas before last. Plain white. Slightly chipped on the handle. The kind of thing you keep not because it is special, but because it was his, and somehow that made it yours. Your phone buzzes. Jordan is at the new place on 5th. He sends a photo. Cocktails. A long table. Everyone is there. You type. Next time. You put the phone face down. You are 23. You have $800 in a savings account you started 6 months ago because something felt wrong about having nothing at all. Nobody in your life would call you disciplined. You would call it something closer to quietly terrified. Here is the part nobody tells you at the beginning. The years it takes to build real money are the same years everything else is happening. Your friends are 23 and enjoying it. Weekend trips. New restaurants. Spontaneous Sundays that do not require a calculator. You are 23 and trying to build something. And for a long time those two things are going to feel like they cannot exist in the same life. You do not know yet what that is going to cost you. Not in money. In something harder to get back. If you want to understand how wealth is actually built, quietly, deliberately, and away from the noise, make sure you subscribe. And tell us where you are watching from. Mug was not a big deal when he gave it to you. He bought 4 of them from a petrol station on a road trip once. Gave one to each of you at Christmas wrapped in a tea towel because he had forgotten to buy wrapping paper. Your mother laughed. You all laughed. You use it every morning. The following year you turn 24. You get your first real job. Project coordination at a logistics company. $44,000 a year. You share a 2-bedroom with a woman named Priya, who keeps different hours and leaves the kitchen light on when she goes to bed. The rent split works. That is the best thing you can say about it. Your car is a 2010 Corolla with 148,000 miles on it. The rear passenger window does not go all the way down. You stopped trying to fix it last winter. The first real decision happens on a Friday afternoon. A woman in your office named Grace mentions a Roth IRA in the break room, the way other people mention the weather. She is 54. She has worked in operations for 23 years. She drives a 2008 Camry and brings lunch every single day in the same green container. She looks like someone who has never worried about money, and you will spend 2 years assuming that means she was born with it before you find out otherwise. She says, put in whatever you can. Even if it feels like nothing, the amount matters less than starting. You open an account that Saturday. You move $75. It feels like dropping a coin into the ocean. 3 months later, your rear brakes go. $680. You pull it from savings and watch the $800 become $120, and you feel something you were not expecting. Not just stress, something closer to grief, for a number you had only known for 7 months. This is what nobody photographs. Not the $75 transfers. Not the Tuesday you decide to bring lunch instead of buying it, because $11 a day is $220 a month, and $220 a month is real. You start doing this calculation constantly. A low hum underneath every purchase. A coffee is not $5 anymore. It is 5 coffees you will not be able to buy in March. Jordan does not do this math. Jordan makes roughly what you make. He works in sales, and he believes, genuinely, not recklessly, that your 20s are for living, not spreadsheets. He books a long weekend to Nashville in August. You tell him you cannot make it work right now. He says, next time. Neither of you knows yet which version costs more. There is something else nobody tells you. You used to be the one who said yes first, before the plan, before the transfers, before the low hum of maths underneath everything. You were the person who would drive 3 hours on a Friday night because someone said let us go. Who would spend money you did not quite have because the moment felt worth it? Who did not check a balance before agreeing to something? That version of you does not disappear overnight. He just slowly stops being invited to things. Not because anyone stops inviting you. Because you say next time enough times that next time starts to feel like a permanent location you never quite arrive at. By the following spring, the account is back to $2,100. It is not a fortune. It is the first proof that the system actually works. And it is the last year money will feel this simple. 2 years pass, and almost nothing happens. That is the honest way to say it. You get a raise. $49,000. Then $53,000. You automate $100 a payday into the Roth, then $150. You pay off a $3,400 credit card balance that had been quietly collecting interest at 21% for 14 months, and once it is gone, you redirect that exact payment straight into investing. Nobody notices. There is no ceremony for paying off a credit card. You just stop having one. The Corolla dies at 174,000 miles. Not dramatically. A transmission that gives up in a supermarket car park on a Sunday morning like it has been waiting for a quiet moment to do it. You buy a 4-year-old Civic in cash. $10,400. Most of your emergency fund. Jordan asks why you did not finance it. You have the credit, he says. Not unkindly. Genuinely curious. You tell him you would rather owe nobody. He shrugs and goes back to showing you the watch he just bought. A real one. Swiss movement. $1,800 to mark his quarterly target. You are wearing the same watch you have worn for 2 years. A plain one. Nothing special. It tells the time. That is all you have ever needed it to do. Somewhere in here you meet Nadia. She works in healthcare administration, has her own modest savings account she contributes to inconsistently and feels guilty about. She does not ask about your finances for the first 4 months you are together, which you appreciate. Because you are not sure how to explain a habit that looks from the outside like almost nothing at all. But after 6 months, she starts to see the shape of it. She wants to book a trip for your anniversary. Somewhere she has always wanted to go. Not expensive, just flights and a hotel for 4 nights. You tell her you can afford it, which is true, but you sit with it for 3 days before you say yes, running the numbers. Calculating the opportunity cost of the flights versus the next 2 months of contributions. She notices the 3 days. She does not say anything directly. She books the trip and you go, and it is good. You are present. You have a real time. But she asks you on the second night, do you ever just spend money without thinking about it first? You think about it. No, you tell her. Not really. She nods, goes back to looking at the menu. You wonder what she heard in that answer. You wonder if it was the same thing you meant. You are not sure it was. By the time you are 26, the invested total, Roth, a small brokerage account, a 401k match you finally started using properly, crosses $34,000. It happens on a Sunday morning while you are making coffee. You do not tell anyone. There was nothing to announce. The account grew the way a tree grows, invisibly, until suddenly you look up and it is taller than you expected. That is when Grace says something to you in the break room that you do not think about again for years. Your account had dropped $1,800 in a week during a rough patch in the market, and it feels like watching water drain from a bath you just filled. She does not look up from her lunch. The money that frightens you now is the same money that will not mean anything to you later. That is the whole point of it. You nod like you understood. You did not. Not really. You file it away. That is when the market drops 18% over 7 weeks. $34,000 becomes $27,900 in less than 2 months. Real money. Gone from a screen. You check the account 4 times a day. Nadia finds you doing it at midnight. She does not say anything. She just puts her hand on your shoulder and goes to bed. Ryan at the office tells anyone who will listen that he got out in time. Sold everything in his 401k the week before it dropped. Moved it to cash. You do not say what you are thinking, which is that he sold low and will buy back in high, because that is what fear always does to money. You do not sell. It is not confidence. It is closer to stubbornness. And Grace's sentence comes back to you at 1 a.m., staring at a red number on your phone. The money that frightens you now is the same money that will not mean anything to you later. You leave it alone. On a Tuesday that takes more nerve than anything you have ever done with money, you increase your contribution by $75 a paycheck, because the fund shares are cheaper now than they were in April. It is the first financial decision you have made that feels less like discipline and more like belief. 6 months after the bottom, the account is not just back to $34,000. It is at $41,000. The drop that terrified you turned out to be the best 7 weeks of buying you will ever have. That winter, your father calls about a procedure his insurance will not fully cover. $4,200 out of pocket. He calls on a Sunday. You are doing your monthly account review. You have it open on your laptop when the phone rings. You close the laptop immediately, like he might somehow see the number and feel like a burden before he even says what he called to say. He explains it quietly, without drama, a little apologetic at the edges. You tell him you will handle it. He says, "Are you sure?" You say yes, and you mean it, and you hang up and transfer the money before you can talk yourself into checking the portfolio first. You cover it without touching your investments. Out of a cash cushion you built specifically because Grace told you once, almost offhand, the emergency fund is not about emergencies. It is about never having to sell what is working. You do not tell your father where the money came from. He just says, "Thank you." And something in his voice makes you realize this is the first time money has done something beyond solving your own problems. You call him back the following Sunday, just to talk. You have not done that in a while. He sounds pleased in the way parents sound pleased when they are trying not to make too big a deal of it. You tell yourself you will call more. You call twice more in the next 4 months. Both times he picks up on the second ring. Both times he sounds pleased. You do not know then that you are counting without meaning to. You are 28. The invested total is $61,000. For the first time, the number stops feeling like an abstraction and starts feeling like a wall between you and certain kinds of disaster. You do not know it yet, but it is also starting to become a wall between you and certain kinds of connection. Jordan gets engaged. The wedding is abroad. Destination thing. He calls it that, half apologetic. Flights. Hotel. An outfit you do not own yet. Roughly $2,200 all in. You go. Of course you go. You have known him since you were 19. But on the flight home you notice something you cannot unfeel. You spent more on that single trip than you invested in your entire first year of trying. You do not resent it. You just notice it. The math has gotten strange. A version of you from 4 years ago would have called $2,200 catastrophic. Now it barely moves anything. On the flight home, Jordan falls asleep beside you. You look at him for a moment. He has the same laugh he had at 19. He still calls you by the nickname you had in first year. He is genuinely happy and genuinely spending everything he earns and genuinely not worried about it. And you realize something sitting on that plane that you have been avoiding. You are not the same person anymore. Not in a bad way. Not in a way that means the friendship is broken. But the version of you that understood his choices from the inside has been replaced by someone who only understands them from the outside. You have built something he cannot see. And somewhere along the way you stopped being able to fully see what he has. You do not know what to do with that thought. So you put your headphones in and watch something until you land. At 30 something shifts that you do not fully understand until Grace points it out. You are at $147,000 invested. The market has a strong year, up around 22%. The portfolio grows by roughly $29,000 without you putting in a single additional dollar beyond your usual automated contributions. Your salary that year brought home around $54,000 after tax. The portfolio's growth alone came close to matching more than half of what you earned working every day. You run the numbers 3 times because you do not trust the first 2. That is the crossover, Grace tells you when you finally mention it. It is not that you stop needing your job. It is that the job stops being the only engine. She says it like it is obvious. To her it is. She crossed that line 11 years ago and has been quietly and completely unglamorously building ever since. Driving the same Camry. Never once mentioning it to anyone who did not ask directly. Around the same time you look at your car and realize almost as an afterthought that you could pay cash for something much newer without touching the portfolio in any meaningful way. You do not. You take it in for a service instead. $340. The mechanic says it has plenty of life left in it. You drive it home and feel the specific quiet satisfaction of choosing not to spend money you clearly have. Ryan gets promoted. New title. New SUV on a 60-month loan. On paper, he is doing better than you by every visible measure. He is not doing better than you. He is 3 years from 50 with a mortgage he has refinanced once, a car payment that will outlast his enthusiasm for the job, and a 401k he is still rebuilding from the year he panic sold. You do not say any of this. You just notice that the things you can now afford and choose not to buy are the exact things he is financing to look like he already has them. Nadia moves in that spring. You split everything evenly. Transparent. No complications. One evening, you show her the number, mostly because you want to stop carrying it alone. She is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "So why do you still act like you cannot afford anything?" You do not have a clean answer. You are still working on one. At 32, the portfolio crosses $280,000, and for the first time, freedom stops being a hypothetical. It shows up in small refusals before it shows up in anything large. Your company offers you a senior role, more money, more travel, more of your calendar belonging to someone else. You turn it down. Not because you do not want the money, because you do the math and realize the extra $9,000 a year is not worth 12 more hours a week of a life you are finally starting to enjoy having outside of work. Your manager is confused. Most people would take this without thinking, he says. You just say you are good where you are, which is true in a way he does not have the context to understand. That summer, a pipe bursts in your father's kitchen. A genuine emergency. $6,400 in repairs. His insurance is slow to process. You write the check without a single moment of hesitation, without checking a balance, without doing any maths at all. That absence of maths is the whole point. 4 years earlier, this bill would have required a spreadsheet and 2 sleepless nights. Now it requires a phone call to your bank and nothing else. Jordan, meanwhile, is talking about a kitchen renovation he is financing at 8.9% because the equity line was basically free money in his words. You do not judge him. He is not reckless. You just notice that his version of security and yours have started to look like 2 different currencies. You take a Wednesday off for no reason and go somewhere with Nadia. It is the kind of thing that used to feel irresponsible. Now it feels like the entire point of the last 8 years. Here is what you are starting to understand slowly. The freedom was never going to arrive as a single dramatic moment. It arrived as a string of small refusals nobody else could see. The promotion you did not take. The car you did not upgrade. The loan you never signed. Choosing to, instead of having to. It is the quietest transformation money ever performs. And it is the one that matters most. But freedom, it turns out, has a bill of its own. And you have not seen it yet. Your father dies in November. Heart. Sudden. No warning. You get the call at your desk on a Thursday, and you do not remember the drive home. At the funeral, you do the maths you swore you would never do at a funeral. How many Sunday dinners did you skip in your 20s because you were tired? Because you were trying to save $220 a month. Because Jordan's messages felt like a distraction from the plan. Because you told yourself there would always be more Sundays once the number was where it needed to be. You cannot get an exact count. You know it is not zero. You know some of those Sundays were at your father's kitchen table. The one that smelled like coffee and whatever he always had on the stove. The one where he would ask how things were going, and you would say fine and mean it in the way people mean it when they are too busy to go deeper. The portfolio that same month crosses $410,000. The number arrives with no ceremony, the way it always does. Except this time the silence does not feel like discipline. It feels like an accusation. You sit in your father's kitchen a few weeks later, just to sit in it. His mug is still on the counter. Plain white, slightly chipped on the handle. There are 3 others exactly like it in a box in the garage. He kept all 4. You pick it up. You do not do anything with it. You just hold it for a moment. You realize sitting there that you have become someone people describe as doing really well without ever explaining what that phrase actually cost. You have money that could survive 14 months without a paycheck. You do not have the 14 months you spent building it. The ones where you chose spreadsheets over Sundays. Where you believed there would always be more time on the other side of the number. Jordan calls. Awkward and genuine. Says he wishes he had known your father better. You realize you wish the same thing. And you had every chance he did not. Grace at the office the following week does not offer advice. She just says, nobody warns you that the discipline that builds the money is the same discipline that can cost you the years. She is not being cruel. She is finally telling you the second half of the sentence she gave you 7 years ago in the break room. You go home. Nadia is there. You sit at the kitchen table for a long time without saying much. Not the same table as before. A different one. In a home you own together now. The mug your father gave you is in the cupboard above the kettle. You brought it when you moved. You use it every morning. You still get the group texts. You answer more of them now. Not because you have more time exactly. But because you finally understand that the time was always the real currency, and the money was only ever a way of buying some of it back. You cannot buy back the Sundays you missed. You can only decide which ones you are going to keep from here. The box of mugs is still in the garage. You have not opened it yet. Some Sunday soon you will. The number in the account is real. So is what it costs to get there. Neither one cancels the other out. That is the part nobody puts in the thumbnail. And while you are here, if you have ever felt like you started too late, like too many years have already gone, that video was made for you. It will change how you think about the time you still have. It is right there. And if you watched all the way to this moment, do well to subscribe if you have not already. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What is one thing you want to make sure you do not lose on your way to getting there? I genuinely read every single one. I will see you there.